What's going on, everybody? It's your boy J Main back checking in with the people, back with another review. And of course, we're talking that HBO's The Last of Us, episode 8, When We Are in Need. This episode, it actually starts off with us getting introduced to a new character. This character's seen reading a passage from the Bible to his people, and we later learn that this is a funeral service for a member of the group that has been lost. What we also learn later on in the episode is that this character is David. Now, David is one of my favorite characters from the game, and I was interested and eager to see how they were going to represent him in the show. Now, I heard that it was only going to be one episode of David prior to watching the episode, so I was a little bit concerned just about how they were going to be able to portray him as a character, as well as his impact on certain characters within the show. He's reading a passage from the Bible to his people, and you could tell that these people actually look up to him to lead, especially in a moment of loss where he's speaking to them about the Bible and just some words of encouragement to keep these people going along. And one of his men, James, as we saw him speaking with him outside, is somebody that is his right hand man. But what's interesting is we, as the game players, know that James is actually played by Troy Baker. Now, Troy Baker is the original voice actor for Joel in the game. So I thought it was cool to see that they have brought back different people to play certain roles from the game. David is speaking with James, and they're just talking about the supplies and food and how much they have, and things are getting low. And David is noticing, some people are losing hope or are losing faith on what is being preached or what is going around in word. And it probably could be because they just suffered a major loss, or they are getting low on food. So people are not feeling as faithful in the group as they might have once felt before. David is actually asking this question to James because he feels like maybe even he doesn't feel as faithful in David as he once felt before. And I thought that was an interesting starting point, especially for them to introduce us to a new character. The scene switches over to Joel and Ellie, and of course Joel is still suffering from that wound that he took in the fight back at the university, and Ellie done stitched him up, but she's noticing that the wound is looking a little infected, and Joel is still kind of in and out of sleep, a little bit unconscious, and she's getting low on food. She tries to feed Joel some water just to get, him hydrated a little bit, because he's just been laying there not eating anything. And that's when she noticed that she has really no food. So she has to go out and hunt and gather. So she went out with Joel's rifle to go and hunt. And what was funny about this hunting scene is that in the game, this bunny rabbit that you see that Ellie actually kills with the bow and arrow, you see actually her trying to hunt down the rabbit and chase it, but she ends up falling on her face, scaring the rabbit away, and it survived. In the game, that rabbit did not have a good ending, a happy ending, but in the show, they actually they gave him a happy ending. He was able to escape. Now, who didn't get to escape is a deer. There's a deer in the show that Ellie actually ends up getting a shot off on. That was the same deer that you actually hunt down in the game, that you see Ellie, and she's chasing it all over, and you can see by her following the tracks of the deer. But by the time Ellie actually gets up to the deer, we get reintroduced to James and David. Now, they actually spotted the dead deer before Ellie even got there, and so Ellie is actually trying to play a tough guy role where she's telling them to back up away from the deer. This is her deer and stuff like that. And she's trying to put on this tough guy voice. Terrible at it. It's horrible because, she's a little girl. So she's trying to project her voice, but they're not buying it. And it's not like they are trying to attack her or anything. David is actually trying to talk to her and let her know that they can make some trades for it, that they have a group back at his place, and she can come back and stay because he believes she's on her own, and all this other stuff to try to get her on his side. While he mentioned that they can make a trade for something, Ellie's like, well, do you have medicine? Because of course Joel is sick, he's hurt. And he's like, David's like, yeah, well, we could get you some medicine. And so he sends James back to the camp to go get Ellie some medicine, and James is looking at him like, yo, this is a little ass girl. Why are we listening to her orders right now? But David is just so fixated on gathering Ellie and getting her on his side. He seems to have a very big interest in her. And so he sends James back to get the medicine as they go and shelter in this building where they start a fire and they're talking. So Ellie has David at gunpoint. She's not she's not letting up. Like they start to talking, but she's not letting him out of his sight. She's not letting this gun up off of him. And they just get to talking about David's trying to get to know her more, but she's not giving up her name or anything like that. So some time goes by, and David is like, that's funny that we're talking about everything happens for a reason, because I recently sent out some men to go scavenge for the group, 4 men, and only 3 returned. And he said one of the men, they got killed. And he said what was crazy is the one man that got killed, they said it was by a crazy man who was traveling with a little girl. And Ellie's face just like lit up in shock, because she realizes he's talking about the moment when they were at the university and Joel got into the fight with one of those men that were sitting outside that attacked him, though. So he was really defending himself, and Joel ends up killing him, but he got stabbed in the process. So it's just crazy how that all came full circle, that Joel kills a man that ends up being a part of David's group, and now Ellie needs something from David's group to help Joel get better. So while they're Ellie is like shocked but still holding the gun to him, is when James returns. And James returns with the medicine, and David's like, listen, give her the medicine, we'll get another chance to go after her, we'll follow her tracks, we'll figure out where the other man, the crazy man, is that we know is Joel. He's still trying to like show her that even though they killed one of his men, he is not like upset with her, he's not mad at her, he doesn't blame her. He just wants her on his side. Ellie gets back to Joel, and she doesn't know how to use a medicine. Like, it's a penicillin in a syringe, and so she doesn't know what she's doing. So she's like talking to herself, trying to figure out what to do with it. And she ends up like stabbing Joel with the syringe in his wound and, injecting the penicillin and praying to God that it works. So David and James now return to their group, and they bring back the deer that Ellie ended up hunting, because of course Ellie's not big enough to drag a whole deer back, and all she really cared about at that moment was getting that medicine back to Joel. David addresses the elephant in the room about them finding the man and the little girl that ended up killing one of their people. And so, he's like, listen, we're going to go out tomorrow morning, hunt down her tracks, find out where the man is, where the girl is, and bring them to justice. She is like, you should kill them both. She's like, you should kill them both. Now, David didn't mention anything about killing them, but he did talk about bringing them to justice. However he figured that is. But because this girl spoke out of turn and spoke out to her new father, because that's what David sees himself as to this little girl now, is that she's fatherless, and now David's her new father. And so she has to learn not to speak out against him. And he slapped the hell out of her. The next morning, Ellie gives Joel another dose of the medicine, and she goes out and she's giving the horse some snow, which is, just something to hydrate the horse. And she's just outside kind of like taking in the air and the scenery. And she notices that the birds are tripping out. They're flying away all in a pack in one direction. So she figures there's somebody or something close by that has the birds or the animals acting up. And so she goes out and looks, and she sees that it's actually David's group. They tracked her back to that location where they are at the house, and they're looking for Joel and Ellie. Ellie goes downstairs, runs back into the house where Joel is, and she tells him that, listen, you need to wake up. You need to get up. Of course, Joel can't move. He's still recovering. The penicillin hasn't really kicked in or done its job yet. And so she's like, there's men coming. You need to get up. But he doesn't get up. And so she hands Joel a knife and, tells him he needs to stay awake because the men are going to be, looking for him and may eventually even come down here. So she hands him a knife and decides to get on a horse to ride away from the group of men so that they are not, close next to Joel. So she's trying to distract them and go in a different direction. Smart move, actually. But, as she does that, she actually starts shooting at him and everything. So they're shooting back at her, chasing after her on the horse. James actually ends up shooting her off the horse, knocking her out and killing the horse. David picks her up and he's like, listen, we're going to bring her back to the group with the horse. And the other 3 men, if they want to really bring Joel to justice, go out and look for him. So I need a couple of y'all to come with me to drag the horse and bring Ellie back. And a couple of y'all, if y'all want to go get justice done, go ahead and find him, because actually after James shot Ellie, they were actually thinking about going to finish her off, because David was like a little bit farther behind them as they approached Ellie, and James was getting ready to shoot her, but David ends up like shooting his gun in the air to like startle them, like, listen, that's not what we're doing. We want her alive. Like he is steady fixed on keeping Ellie alive. This man want her bad. One of the men actually gets to the house that Joel is in, and he sees that because Ellie used like a china cabinet to block the basement door, kind of making it obvious that something important was down there. But he removes the china cabinet and goes downstairs. But we see that Joel ain't even there no more. So I guess that penicillin kicked in at the right time, because Joel got his ass up. The man knows like, all right, somebody was here. So let me look around in the basement, see if he's anywhere. And Joel ends up behind him and stabs him in the neck to death. Like this guy was bleeding from his mouth as they like kind of like wrestled to the ground. He's kind of like fighting for his life, but that stab to the neck done did him in. Joe hit him with that stealth shiv. A classic move from the game, but it was dope as hell to see that actually happen in the show. Ellie, she was waking up from being knocked out after getting shot off the horse, and she wakes up in a cage back at David's camp, and they're in like this butcher's room, and of course David again is continuously trying to get Ellie to join him, to be on his side, and forget about Joel. Like, you know, she's like, he's telling Ellie, I'll tell my men to back off. As long as Joel doesn't come after us, you could join us. We could be together. We could be this team, this dynamic duo. But Ellie ain't trying to hear none of that. Back at the group where the people are hunting Joel, there's two men, and one of them actually gets knocked out, but the other man can hear it from like on the other side of the wall. And as he goes to like investigate what happened to his other dude, Joel comes out and gun butts him with the gun and knocks him out as well. Now these two men, they wake up and they're both tied up. One's tied up to a chair, one's like on the floor tied up, and Joel is interrogating them. Now this is a scene that I loved in the game. Like this showed the character that Joel has and what he's capable of, because we all know back in those 20 years that led up to the events of, you know, this game after his daughter had got murdered, he was a ruthless guy. And so I thought they kind of did it justice in the show, showing Joel interrogate the two men. He's like, he stabbed one of them in the kneecap, and he's like, where is like Ellie? Like, where's the little girl? And the guy's telling him like, listen, she's alive. She's back at our camp. And so Joel like whips out a map, and he's like, listen, point on here on the map to where she is and where we are, so I know like how to get there or whatever. And if your man doesn't point to the same spot, it's gonna be some problems. Smart interrogation tactic. I loved it in the game. I loved it in the show here. And so after the man points to the location where it's at, Joel straight up stabs him, ruthless, stabs him, kills him. And the other dude's like, yo, like, what are you doing? Like, this dude told you where everything, like, where is that? Like, and he's like, listen, I'm not telling you nothing now. You killed my mans. I'm not telling you where the resort is. And he's like, it don't even matter, because I believe him. And he picks up a pipe and proceeds to, or at least what it looks like, he's going to beat him over the head with the pipe and kill him. Fire scene. I thought this was incredible. I thought this is the Joel I've been waiting to see in this show, because like I know what Joel is capable of, especially from playing the games, and I just feel like they've been shying away from this type of character, these type of scenes in the show, and I don't know why, because this is the stuff I think people should see. So back to where Ellie is being held captive at David's camp. Like she's trying to escape, but she notices a human ear on the floor in the butcher room, so she's like freaked out about it. And David, he comes back and he's trying to talk to her, give her some food, but she kicks it away, and she's like, are y'all like eating people? Like she's like, why are we in the butcher room and I see a human ear on the floor? Now David straight up admits to it. He's like, yeah, but we had to do that as a last resort, because these people here, they trust me, and they trust that I'm going to protect them and that I'm going to give them food. And so it was a necessary evil that had to be, you know, done in order to keep things going. And he actually starts to compare what he does to the cordyceps, about how while we look at the cordyceps as violent or something that is bad, they look at it like, if you was to take it from a cordyceps perspective, they're doing what they need to do to survive, to, feed their children and stuff like that, as a bacteria. And so that's how David looks at it. What he's doing, he feels like it's evil, but it's necessary. So then David starts to get into like this pedophile mode, and like he's talking to Ellie as if she's his lover, and they'll be a great team together, and he just needs her on his team because them two, they could take it to the top. He's like holding his hand on top of hers, and it almost looked like she starts to give in, but then she ends up breaking his finger. So like I said, he had his hand on top of hers, and she like put her other hand on top of his, and she's like, oh yeah? And then she like snaps that man's finger back, and he's going crazy, broken hand. And she tries to grab like the keys to get out of the cage, but he notices in time and ends up like slamming her head against the cage and, knocking her back. He's like, fuck that. Like, it's over. Like, I tried my best to get you on my side. I tried my best to be a pedophile and coerce you, but you ain't going for it. So we're going to chop you up into little pieces like we did these other people. Joel is now seen, trucking through a blizzard, trying to find Ellie in the location that they had pointed out on the map. And he come across this building where it has like a blood trail going inside. So immediately he's probably thinking like, oh snap, like they did something bad to Ellie. I don't know what I'm gonna find in here, but maybe I can save her in time. And when he goes in there, he sees like Ellie's book bag. He sees the dead horse in there, but he also finds the dead human bodies that they've been using as food. Like they had them hanging upside down, wrapped up like they ready to be butchered and delivered for tonight's dinner. Like that's how they had the human bodies just hanging up in there. Some sick shit, but it made for some dope ass scenery. So Ellie is back locked up in the cage, and he feels like he's getting closer, but now David has entered back into the area where she is in the cage, and he's back with James. Now James, they're wrestling with Ellie, trying to get her up because they about to put her ass on the butcher table and slice her into pieces. But Ellie actually bites David in the process as she's like wrestling to get on the table. So they finally get on the table, and David's about to hit her with the butcher's knife, and she screams out that she's infected, and she's like, "You're infected now too because I bit you," talking to David. And he's like, "Nah, I don't believe that. That's bullshit." And she's like, lift up my arm sleeve and you'll see it. And you can see like, her bite mark, but it's also like, it looks like it's healed over. We've seen her bite mark before. Hers looks a little bit different, but they're looking at it. They're like, nah, ain't no way. James is like, yeah, that looked like something. Like that's something you got going on that arm. And while they're like kind of like arguing in disbelief, Ellie picks up the butcher's knife and hits James in the neck with it, like killing him. Savage mode. Gotta love it. Like love what I was seeing from Bella Ramsey as Ellie in this episode. Runs off the table and out of the room that they were in, and David is like trying to shoot at her, but he misses every shot, point blank range. But trying to shoot at her, he misses. She runs into another room, which is like a dining hall area, and she notices this firewood. So she has this firewood, and it's already lit. And David picks up the knife that was in James's neck, and he's like chasing after Ellie. Now, as David runs into the room that Ellie's in, she tries to throw the firewood at him, misses horribly, and ends up setting the whole room on fire. So now David is like looking around this room for Ellie. She's hiding, and he's like trying to talk to her, like, he's still not believing that she's infected, because he's like, you're not infected because somebody who is about to die wouldn't be fighting this hard to stay alive. She actually ends up finding a knife in this like dining hall kitchen and hides as he's like walking around looking for her. And when he got his back turned to her, she pops out and stabs him with the knife. He like throws her to the floor, kicks her in the stomach, and it's like jumping on top of her. David got on his pedophile vibes again, and he's like, oh, I love it when they fight and scream, and he's like telling her like, don't deny love. And she's screaming, wilding out. But when she stabbed David, he ended up dropping the butcher's knife, and she was able to reach for it as he was like pinning her to the floor, and just started hacking at him, going crazy. Ellie actually kills David in this scene, and ends up leaving the dining hall area back outside because David locked the doors. And so, she leaves out of the door that he ended up locking at the end. In the game, she actually hacks him and is like going crazy on him, but it's interrupted. Now, in the TV show, of course, we see that as she is done killing David and walking outside, somebody grabs her from behind, and we learn that this is Joel. And she's wild, she's screaming, bugging out, scared because she feels like she's about to get captured again. And when she finally comes to her realization that it's Joel that is grabbing her, she starts to calm down and hug her, and Joel's like, it's okay, baby girl. They switched it up a little bit because Ellie in the game, like I said, she was hacking at David, and Joel comes up from behind her in that scene while she's like kind of hacking away at him. I like that version of it better, just because he like gets her in the moment of her, having her breakdown of going after David and going crazy on him with that butcher's knife, versus this where it's still a good scene, but she's like walking outside kind of in a daze, and then gets grabbed up again by somebody else, which ends up being Joel. He gives her his coat, and they kind of like walk away from David's camp, and as the screen fades to black, and that's how the episode ends. I thought overall it was a good episode. Still disappointed in how much infected is in this world. Like in the game, there were moments where even when David was with Ellie as they were waiting for the guy to come back with the medicine, that moment in the game, even though it didn't play out the same, they had some infected that they had to defend themselves from. And I thought that would have been a good gameplay moment that they could have portrayed in the show, because it wasn't just about them battling the infected. It was about Ellie trusting David more, as they work together to protect themselves from the infected. So I thought it led more into her trusting David more as a character, or get to see more of Joel battling through some infected as he's working his way towards the camp where David is and where they have Ellie. Because while he did his thing when he was taking out those men that were trying to hunt him down, I thought it would have been cool just to see him come across a few more people when he was going through that blizzard, whether it be infected or whether it be other people that were working with David. Let me know down in the comment section what you guys think about this episode. Rate the video, of course, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll catch y'all on my next one. Peace.